Good evening. I'm Congressman Adriano of New York's 13th Congressional District, and I am delighted to lend my voice to the New York Theater Barn, an anti-racist, non-for-profit theater company that has become an incubator of culture-shifting musicals since 2007. As the only formerly undocumented immigrant to serve in Congress, an active member of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, y como soy puro dominicano, I am thrilled to help kick off tonight's A Seat at the Table, a panel on Latinx theater creators. It is imperative that Latinx art, culture, and stories are nurtured, and that what tonight is all about is really all about that. Tonight we celebrate the residency of SUEñOS, Our American Musical, a new musical by Mexican-American writer Jesse Sanchez. Enjoy y pa'lante, mi gente.
Buenas noches y bienvenidos a esta presentación especial. Un lugar en la mesa, un panel de creadores de teatro latinos. Good evening and welcome to tonight's special presentation, A Seat at the Table, a panel on Latinx theater creators. In celebration of Hispanic Heritage Month, New York Theater Barn is proud to make space for Latinx theater creators, artists, and communities.
For the past 14 years, New York Theater Barn has created a home for original, culture-shifting musicals during incubation.
Since 2007, New York Theater Barn has valued musical theater as one of the world's supreme healing tools, creating space for artists to dream about how beautiful and extraordinary the world can be. New York Theater Barn also provides space, funding, and a safe opportunity to experiment in front of live audiences, often for the first time.
Each original musical's intention, content, and journey are unique and extraordinary to the storytellers who create them. We believe that there is no formula for musical theater except authenticity.
Stories shape how we see ourselves and those around us. We have the unique opportunity to not only uplift and inspire, but also to champion the spectrum of voices in our world. Representation and accessibility are important to us, so we are focused on the stories that need to be seen and whom those stories serve.
With intention, New York Theater Barn is actively expanding who has access to musical theater developmental opportunities and are excited to seek, curate, and amplify stories that lift up marginalized communities and artists, including those who are BIPOC, disabled, queer, transgender, women identifying, under 18, over 60, and more.
The company is particularly excited about Jesse Sanchez's SUEñOS, Our American Musical, which tells the untold story of 3 generations of a Mexican-American family and their pursuit of the American dream. A portion of tonight's proceeds will support an upcoming residency directed by the incomparable Rita Torres, one of tonight's moderators.
In the midst of a global pandemic, the company has pivoted, evolving their programming and storytelling systems to continue supporting artists and the development of new musicals. Over the past 18 months, the company has showcased the development of 96 original musicals created by 181 writers, making space for over 600 artists.
The company recently launched a new podcast from Broadway Podcast Network, The Musicals of Tomorrow, where they speak in community with musical theater writers and their creative teams.
New York Theater Barn also launched Theater Barn Records, a new imprint of Broadway records dedicated to original musicals in development.
New York Theater Barn has connected thousands of artists and audiences from all over the world, and their live virtual programming has been recognized by the National Musical Theater Innovation and Exploration Fund.
A global pandemic and a systemic reckoning has given us the unique opportunity to empower artists, lift up culture-shifting stories, support our community, and make musical theater develop in the most accessible that it's ever been for both artists and audiences.
As an anti-racist, nonprofit theater company that actively seeks out and curates important culture-shifting stories from communities we need to hear from, the New York Theater Barn team continues to discuss ways for the organization to further develop anti-racist culture. Tonight's roundtable discussion is a part of that work.
Tonight's prolific panel of Latinx artists will take up space to collectively investigate, inspire, and ignite the future of the performing arts. New York Theater Barn is committed to creating a safe space to have uncomfortable conversations comfortably, and believes that there is a place for all of us at the table of the American theater.
Gracias por acompañarnos esta noche. And now, I'm proud to introduce tonight's moderators, Maria Torres and Héctor Flores Jr.
Hey, Maria, how are you?
Hey, Hector, I'm so happy to be here with you this evening. What an amazing event that we're going to be about to embark on.
Yes, I'm so excited. I put on cologne. I was like, yes, I'm going to get it. I'm trying to everybody. Everybody can smell me.
I always wear cologne, and I'm glad that you did. Thank you. Well, not cologne. I wear some like a nice little beautiful light perfume.
Exactly. So as Melinette mentioned earlier, I wanted to let everybody know that tonight is a fundraiser, and it is to raise funds for SUEñOS, Our American Musical. And it's a new musical by Jesse Sanchez. And here's a little bit more about it. So let's check it out.
A bit about why I wrote the show. I was inspired about 3 years ago to put together this awesome new kind of vibe of a musical, and it comes from a place where I say, how come I can't sing that song? How come we can't sing that song? And I think the window of opportunity for Latinx works is right now. And so I feel like it's the perfect time for this musical, a Latinx musical, for us to kind of just tell our story. So SUEñOS, Our American Musical. I was working on the Hamilton tour and started talking to the associate director there, and she said I should write a treatment. So I ended up writing a treatment, and then from then on just continued with the process and learning, and brought Jeff aboard, plus a whole slew of other people who have been helping me, including New York Theater Barn and Arizona.
We are currently incubating a new musical by Mexican-American writer Jesse Sanchez called SUEñOS, Our American Musical. SUEñOS tells the untold story of 3 generations of a Mexican-American family as they confront challenges, make sacrifices, break cycles, and celebrate community in the pursuit of the American dream. This multi-generational story follows the protagonist, Ali, as he comes of age and discovers his identity, potential, and queerness amidst a pious upbringing, subsequently navigating life as an artist and a father. With the support of a grant from the National Alliance for Musical Theater's Frank Young Fund, New York Theater Barn will further support this extraordinary new work by focusing funds for a week-long residency directed and choreographed by Broadway's Rita Torres during Hispanic Heritage Month 2021. The show was previously developed in our New Work series, our award-winning virtual New Work series, and our choreography lab. Through a Latinx lens, this musical shares the universal themes of identity, religion, family, culture, and the indelible power of home. We hope that members of the Latinx community will see their culture and story represented on stage and realize that they too belong up there under the bright lights.
How exciting and inspiring is it to see new works by Latinx artists about Latinx artists? It's amazing.
Yeah, it is. It's so exciting. And it's really the most, really an important time, I think, in history for us to be able to really celebrate all of the wonderful people that we're about to talk to, as well as this beautiful story that we're going to be embarking upon developing. So I'm completely just like, you see me smiling, right? So I'm a very proud Latina, and just, I can't wait. I can't wait to get into the room with Jesse and with yourself and with everybody else, and also to be able to have some fun and important conversations this evening.
And I think it is that time.
Yes, I think it is too, for sure. Go ahead, honey, let's go.
So we'd like to introduce you to our distinguished panel.
Yes. Well, it's time for everyone that has been waiting for. We would like to introduce you to our distinguished panel, like Hector had said. And we have Andrea Burns, an amazing Broadway actor, and Victoria Collado, director, Natasha Diaz, Broadway actor, Vanessa Garcia, writer. We have Robbie Hager, Broadway actor and composer, songwriter, and I call him El Maestro, Mr. Jaime Lozano. And we also have here Shireen Pimentel from West Side Story. Welcome, mi amor. And Tony-nominated costume designer and the new chair of the American Theater Wing, Mr. Emilio Sosa.
Hey, welcome, bienvenidos al barn, everybody.
Yes, bienvenidos todos. I'm so excited.
Well, I'd like to start off by congratulating Robbie, Little Duende, getting into NAMP. That is so exciting. Congrats.
Muchas gracias. Thank you. I'm super excited. Thank you.
Yeah, congratulations.
And just so everybody else knows, Robbie is doing Spanish lyrics on Sueños, which Jesse wrote, and Jesse was his music director at the O'Neill just now.
He was a arranger. He was helping us with arranging.
Arranger.
Yeah. I love Jesse. I love Jesse so much. Oh my God, he's the best.
Well, if everybody's ready, I'd like to get started, and I'd like to kick us off with a quote by our Emilio Sosa. You can't escape art when you're in New York. And being Latino from the Bronx, our art may not have been in frames in museums, but it was on walls. We heard it in the music our parents played. It was in the colors of the rooms that were painted. I grew up in a colorful world that wasn't traditional.
And with that, I want to direct this question to you, Emilio. You know, what is traditional? Right, exactly. You know, mi amigo. You know, we've had plenty of conversations, and now we can have it publicly too as well. You know, but what is traditional in the eyes of an American doing their art in New York City?
I'm sorry. Well, what is traditional about?
What is traditional in the eyes of an American doing their art in New York City?
You know what? I can't answer that because I'm not an American. I am Latino who grew up in America. So my culture really is Latino culture. I might have grown up in I would call it the secular world of America. But when I came home, that was a very Dominican Caribbean bubble. And that's the same thing for my mom's 8 other sisters and brothers and my dad's 8 other sisters and brothers. So I come from 2 very large families. So we had a really bubble-like experience within the South Bronx. So I can answer that question as a Latino influence that grew up under the American system is about assimilation. That's what they want all immigrants to do, is to assimilate, and not just culturally, but politically and artistically. So as a Latino artist growing up in America, I had to code switch. I had to assimilate. I can, I'm Afro-Latino, so, I have the African Black culture in me because of the environment I grew up. But then I'm Latino and I'm fluent in Spanish and I have the Spanish in me. So for me, it's about assimilation and finding a time where you don't have to anymore.
Wow. Well, I mean, I could totally identify with that because I'm a Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban from Brooklyn, and so I'm first generation Latina, and I totally understand what you said because I remember outside my parents always talk about the assimilating that they had in Spanish, and their first language, that was their language, and then they wanted us in the home to speak Spanish because in our house we were being surrounded by our culture from Santo Domingo y Cuba y Puerto Rico. So I completely I totally get that. And I appreciate you for sharing that because as Afro-Latinos, this is a really important and pivotal time. And as Latinos in general, to us to be able to really expose ourselves and this general audience about our about our culture, you know, and the love of our cultura, and the fact that, yes, we have been assimilating, and it's time now to be able to share all of us as well as celebrate, because I'm an American. So like, when people ask me, what am I said, I have three things. My ethnicity is Puerto Rican, Dominican, Cuban. Okay. My nationality, obviously I'm an American, and my race is Black. So, you know, and I've got all of that arroz con pollo y sancocho también, you know, that's Spanglish. So yes, thank you so much for your answer.
So does anybody else want to comment on that?
Yeah, well, you know, let's hear from, yes.
I mean, I feel like I get to say that I'm bicultural and have this whole mix, like you're saying, because so many people that came before me, like my parents and grandparents, had to be forced to potentially assimilate or not, right? So I get to say I'm completely American and also Cuban, and I get to have both things going. And there's something beautiful about that I know is really an honor of everything that my parents and grandparents went through. So like I get that inner house of Spanish, and I'm right now I'm like using that rule with my kids, you know, and so I hope that continues on. But yeah, what that all looks like is very, very mixed, and like right now I think I have the privilege of saying it's a mixed bag, and it can be that. And that's what I am, and that's fine.
That's great. And that's the way, yeah. Anybody else wants to answer that? Thank you, Vanessa. Go ahead, Jaime.
Yeah, you were asking about what is traditional in New York City. And I mean, you can just go out there in the street, and it's a funny paradox that nothing is traditional in New York City. I mean, in New York City, anything goes. Mm-hmm. You go out there and anything goes. So it's a funny paradox that you go to theater, you see a show that is supposed to be set in New York City, and you just see one kind of people. When in real life, in the street out there, you see all kind of people, you listen all kind of languages, all kind of shapes, color, shades. So art should be a reflection of what is life. And I don't think that reflection is in theater or in art. Even in New York City, that we have it here, I don't know, we haven't gone in that direction. So,
well, I mean, that kind of brings us to our next point, like being in New York. Yeah. For those people who are not from New York, what specifically brought you here to do your art?
Jaime, you can continue that. You can answer that question. You know?
I mean, yeah, what I love to do is tell stories through music and words. Like I realize that one of the most powerful art form is musical theater. I'm putting music and words together. And back in my country, in Mexico, unfortunately, this is not an art form. I mean, we don't have a lot of musical theater. It's not a business there. So it was obvious that I needed to go to a place where I needed to learn from people, from other people, and I could be able to tell my stories. And that was New York City. I mean, that is the reason, because if I were in Mexico, maybe I would be like teaching in the university, like doing other things, but not telling stories. And that's why I'm here, because I want to tell my stories and my journey, you know.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, I mean, we are a melting pot here. And that's why I said I can identify with what Vanessa said, Emilio, and even with you, because I got to live in Dominican Republic. And my first language was Spanish, because I lived in Dominican Republic at the age of 4, was given a book and learned my ABCs and had to be able to speak, read, and write by the age of 4. That was what my mother wanted. So by 5, when we came back here and I was put into a Catholic school, it was, oh my God, having to like assimilate, forget it, you know, and to learn the language. And so I always remember having to be at my home inside, surrounded by cultura, and then outside, which is Brooklyn and Manhattan and everything else, as we grew up, surrounded by a different type of multicultural, you know, cultura, which is its own, you know, mixed bag. So I am so happy that tonight we're starting to have these conversations, because this is going to lead to much more. And I also wanted to hear from, I think it was Vanessa that you said you were, or Victoria? Yeah.
Oh, well, I don't know if you wanted to ask Vanessa the question, but I have an answer. So if you want to ask Vanessa the question first, I'll give my answer.
No. Go ahead. Because basically I was going to keep that thread. That's okay. I was going to keep that thread of what she said earlier. Like, in hearing Jaime speak, and you said that you're trying to keep that tradition, right? But also as as an artist, like how do you respond to this too? What we're talking about right now?
How do I respond specifically to being to New York calling? Because New York calls all of us, right? Like it's it's the asshole, right? It's the space you want to be. And I'm from Miami, a place of many cultures, and so I was born in this space of all the languages are spoken at the same time. And when I went to New York, I mean, I felt like it was really interesting because I had gone to like other places first, as an 18-year-old in the States, and was like, oh my God, what is this place? Is America. Like, I didn't know that, like, I went to Rhode Island first. Like, what is this? I have no idea about this place. And I was really, like, I was supposed to go to Brown for school, and then I didn't understand it at all. And I left, and I took a semester off, and I ended up in New York City. And New York City felt like, oh, okay, this is a little closer, right? Like, this is a little bit more of a mixture of people, even though it's not the same thing, right? It's not the inside warmth, and it's not the same thing, but there's a lot of people speaking a lot of languages at the same time, and that's great. You know what I mean? And so, like, we're being forced to talk to each other, and I love that because that's where I come from, and I felt comfortable in that space. So I was in New York for 7 years, and now I am Miami always calls me back. It's like New York, Miami calls me back. But New York is a very, very special place because it makes you do that. It is the place of many languages, and in that I don't think that it can be more American. You know what I mean? And that kind of that dichotomy is also really beautiful to me, and I do see the optimism in that, even though we struggle to tell our story and to tell the real story and to tell the authentic story and not just the label story, but it's a start, right?
Absolutely. And I think that everything that you're saying, because remember, I was born and raised here too, and I got to live outside of that. But being born and raised here, I love the energy that New York City has, and that as a child growing up and a young teenager, we were exposed to art for free, poetry, poems, galleries that we can go to, listening to outside stories, which is kind of like what we're coming back to, hopefully even more, this year, which is, after 18 months of us being sheltered in place, it's exciting to start feeling that energy again. So I do resonate with that. And Victoria, you wanted to chime in on this too.
Sure. Well, I'm also a Cuban from Miami. We're very uncommon here. But Vanessa and I actually have a company together, so that's why you'll hear a lot of stuff. But actually, my assimilation actually happened when I moved to New York. I did not know that I was other until I moved to New York, and I was confronted with people who actually wanted me to perform my Latinidad. Because here in Miami, I'm a Cubanita, and when you ask the hyphen of Cuban American, the American is already expected. Like, you don't have to add it. So like, you're talking to somebody and they're like, oh no, I'm Colombian. Oh yeah, I'm Dominican. Oh yeah, I'm Cuban. And so all of that is happening. And then you hit New York, and all of a sudden it's like, one of the first comments I got at a job was like, just add your Latin flair to that. And I'm like, what does that even mean? It was marketing. It was like marketing pamphlets, and like I had to spread them out. I was like, add your Latin flair to that. And it was like this sort of, oh, wait, in here, I am other. Yeah. Whereas home, we just kind of, like in Miami, we kind of just flow. Like, it's just like, if you're not speaking Spanish, you're not surviving in Miami. So it's such an interesting, it was such a crash. But ironically, what's beautiful about New York is that you are meeting the rest of the world there. You are meeting people with different backgrounds. You're seeing the similarities in different ways, not just from a Hispanic background. And also it's the megaplex of theater. Like, where are you going to go? Like down here in Miami, even though we're mostly Hispanics, it's a lot of traditional American plays when I graduated college. So the only place that was actually doing Hispanic theater was New York at that time, or completely Spanish theater here.
Yeah.
You know, I did a reading of a new play that was being directed by Luis Salgado. It's called Checo Albany, and it's by Hadassah Mercado Cortez, who is a brilliant Puerto Rican writer from Puerto Rico. And the character that I played was born in Puerto Rico, but then moved to Albany, New York. And in the script, he says, you know, I feel American when I'm home. I feel most Puerto Rican when I leave the house because I realize that I'm different.
Mm-hmm.
Claridad de la casa, oscuridad de la calle. Or the flipped one. It's flipped.
No, actually, I wanted to mention something, on that what Victoria just said too. Is like when I moved when I was 14 from Mexico to Westchester County, 40 minutes north of New York, which is mostly predominantly white or very rich, very wealthy area. Mm-hmm. And like, it was really, it hit me harder than I thought it did. Now that I look back, there was a lot of assimilation that I had to do as well. And it kind of affected me for a good chunk of time, especially for like trying to get into acting, trying to get into these roles and auditioning. And I was trying to be the white version of me, because a lot of people said like, oh, you're blanquito, you can pass as blanquito a little bit. And I was like, I guess, okay, so I'll just go that way. And I didn't have the assistance, I guess, at that point at the school that I was going at of how to maneuver that, right? And now I'm going back and thinking of how tough that is pretty harsh. And now it makes me really go back to really my roots, because I didn't want to lose anything of me being Mexican. Like my mom would always say, "Ay, Robbie, por favor, canta canciones de Juan Gabriel, Jorge Negrete," and I'd be like, "No, I don't want to do that. That's not what Broadway wants right now, right?" And main reason why I want to write for Mexicans, the specific reason of why I want to predominantly write Mexican Latina shows. And seeing amazing composers like Jaime too and Jesse, like seeing these people just like creating this stuff is so relieving to me. Like, there anybody who's coming, who's like 13 or 14 years old, coming to this country and have that issue, it's like there are parts for you, and you do belong on Broadway without you having to change anything. And like that was a big shift for me, specifically in the pandemic, that I had so much time to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think all of us have. And for me, like what I think resonates when hearing you speak is the fact that as a Latina growing up, where I knew exactly what I wanted to do was to be an artist, right? To be a dancer, an actor, sing, whatever it was. And I was always told no, because I wasn't tall enough, dark enough, black, white enough, light enough, all the no's that they said. And so I had to really navigate and really dig in deep as to trying to find my own within New York City, where I was born and raised in, where I thought I could have all the opportunities, because those opportunities were being passed over because of the perception of what they think that Latinos are at that time, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, it was having to dig into my roots and take what was being given, what I loved about theater and that live, being able to bring that story, and then finding myself and saying, I'm just going to be 100% me. And as a Latina, I'm going to create my own space. And that's what led me to be able to be in those rooms, being myself. So when they said Latinidad, it was because that's the only option that I had. They weren't giving me an option to be able to play other roles because they couldn't see me in those roles. Yeah. You see what I mean? They saw me as a sexy young lady. So I think that this is such a pivotal time in what you're saying, that you're writing your stories, because yes, we don't have to play the stereotypical roles, or we can just be telling stories. They're universal, and which is beautiful.
Showing our culture in the way that we know it, instead of having somebody else assume what it looks like. That's the thing. Like, we get to show exactly what our culture looks like, and without it becoming a stereotype. I think that's the one thing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I want to bring Andrea into this, because we've had conversations, Andrea, you and I, regarding this, and I want you to share from your perspective too, like some of the things that we're talking about right now.
Well,
especially being someone who's from like two different cultures, like when those cultures with each other, how does that work?
Yeah,
I'm a mixed person, and so my father is Jewish American. There's like a whole Borscht Belt, Catskills side of me that is totally different from my mom, who is Venezolana. But I grew up in Miami, so I feel like I have this Cuban heart. Yes, Miami. Vanessa and Victoria, I feel you so hard because same thing. Please, in Miami, growing up in like the 70s and 80s, if you were Jewish and Latin, you had keys to all the kingdoms. So I was like, this is my town and I speak all the languages. And so I didn't know, I've never heard anybody else say, Victoria, that I was otherized once I got to New York. That's exactly how I felt. I thought, this is amazing. Isn't it better to have a million cultures so you have keys to all the doors? This is what I thought, right? And then you realize that, you know, it certainly was not that way in the commercial theater. But I think that we were all drawn to New York, if we want to ask why. Excellence, right? This is like the center of where it is happening. On all the highest levels in business and fashion and art. And, you know, so I think that's what drew us here. And then the conversation has been about, but if excellence is what draws us here, then the package that it comes in should not be as important.
Exactly.
Right? So this is what we're trying to bring to the table and we've all seen it. You know, we've all been to a performance where somebody walks out that you didn't expect in a package that you didn't expect and levels the room and moves you and transcends the piece and unites everyone in a dark room watching them. We know that that experience exists or we wouldn't be here. And so we know it's possible. And now it's just about having enough of us around to affirm that.
Which is a different time.
I'd like to know what, Shireen, if we can hear from you first, what was the first time that you saw yourself in a show? And what was that like?
Yeah, so I think about this quite a bit because I think the overarching thought is about like assimilation. And I had that by a lot. I was born in Manhattan, lived in the Bronx until I was about 5 and then moved to New Jersey, but it's like 20 minutes away. So it was as if I was born and raised in Manhattan. And the first time I actually felt like I saw myself in a show was when I saw The Lion King. And it was because I'm Jamaican and Puerto Rican. And it was like this feeling that I had to iron out as much as I could to fit somewhere. And I was like, well, they look like me, so I fit here, you know, because my race is, I'm an African-American woman. I'm like, that's it. That's where I'm going to fit. And that's what I'm going to go for. And so I would dig deep into that thought. And then as I got older, I'd be like, but there's this whole other side of me that I don't feel like I'm able to be authentic to. Because I'm already trying to iron out the like racial part of like literally like straightening your hair every day and like trying to speak a certain way. And like the thought of going to Catholic school, like you go to Catholic school and you go all these different places and like your parents try, like, because they go through things as well. I didn't learn Spanish at home. When I was in the Bronx for 5 seconds, I was learning Spanish when I went to daycare and everything like that. But the second we moved to New Jersey, that was gone because we're trying to assimilate into this whole new life. So that also got lost. And so as I grew up, I thought, you know, where am I in this part of who I am culturally? Because that like, even though the language got lost in our house, the rest of the culture wasn't gone. It was still like a very vibrant and pulsating piece of my life. And I don't think I saw myself as a Hispanic woman on stage until a lot later. And I don't even think I can fully pinpoint it because, as a lot of people have been saying, the Afro-Latina and Latinx story is being built and told. And there's so many people coming up right now being able to tell that story. And that is some of what I missed because I saw Latin people on stage and I was like, yes. But then we got into the whole idea of, well, if maybe you're a lighter skinned Hispanic, maybe you play like a more demure role. And if you're darker skinned, maybe you're a little more sassy. And I was like, why does it matter like what we look like as a Latin person, to then stereotype the characteristics that come with the skin tone that you have. And so that is something that I will say I actually feel like I've missed and am seeing more of as I grow up and as I'm able to be one of those people in the room, and bring that part. And a big thing in life right now is like labels, like who are you? What do you, and I think that actually can be a very, very powerful thing, because being able to step out and say, I'm an Afro-Latina performer, gives other people who haven't been able to see, like I got to play Maria, who have not seen a woman of color play Maria, get to actually see that happen and see that like they do it and that they don't have to look a certain way or like iron out what they look like. Because that's what I kept feeling like I had to do. I look the way I look, but if I fixed everything else and then walked in the room, maybe by some chance I could like trick somebody into thinking that I belonged there. And I was very lucky to just have a few people that advocated for me, being like, be yourself, just be yourself. Like, we're hiring you for you. And then being able to say, oh, that's interesting. Like, who am I? Like, who am I really without the, like, all the things on top? Yeah,
so
that's
a lot of shedding. And no,
yeah,
but that's
it's
a lot of shedding. A lot of shedding, absolutely.
Yeah,
you know?
and as people have said, quarantine has also been a really huge part of that. I wear my hair like natural now a lot of the time, and there's a lot of things that I'm still learning and navigating as time goes on, to feel comfortable actually within myself to say, oh, that looks nice, or oh, that's a good thing, even though it's like exactly natural how I show up. It's a hard thing to go through, but like really great.
Yeah, it is. It's both.
So beautiful.
Yeah, that's awesome, Shirley. Thank you for that. That was beautiful.
Yeah, good.
I just wanted to add on to that, Shireen, because first of all, it's so beautiful, and thanks for sharing it. All of this is part of evolution as well. So in a way, the fact that you never saw that is part of the reason it is coming into existence. So that is also very important. When we go, oh, well, I don't see this and I don't see this. I go back to like when I first met Lin-Manuel Miranda and he was writing the off-Broadway, the Workshop of Heights. He said one of the most amazing things I had ever heard, which was, I love musicals and I wanted to be a Puerto Rican in a musical. And there wasn't one where I didn't carry a knife in my hand, so I wrote one, right? And what I love about that is, this is, of course, he's a little kid. This is pre-social media and Twitter, but, it wasn't like he was just up and down with his, sign picketing theaters. He put a pen in his hand and he made it happen. And that's what our responsibility is as artists, to evolve the form based on what we wish we had and evolve it for the next generation. So,
and it's so interesting because I remember, like, that's what happened with me. It was at the time when it was like almost like the I would say mid to late 90s, where I was already like on my way to go to Hollywood to do like film. I was doing film. I was working in the music industry. I was like literally having like a major career, right? And then I get a call to be able to come in to work with Richard Franco Productions and then originate a role that would allow me in dance to be able to be completely myself. And right, so it wouldn't have a name, but that it was the title was called Swing, and that I would be this main one of the main as a Black Latina to be in that role. So I never forget that, because that specific role, when I went to do that, I was shocked because they didn't know our music, they didn't know how to be able to really do that, put it together. I remember bringing in like Latin music, and I said, learn your clave. This is to the musical director, and to like Lin Taylor Corbin was the director. I was like, listen, there's 9 forms of swing, and what do you want me to do? Well, we want you to bring Latin. I said, there is no swing in Latin, but I could bring my own swing. There's samba, there's cha-cha, there's mambo, there's merengue. What do you want? There's rumba, all these different things. And I remember putting this potpourri and having to have Harold Wheeler be brought in so that he can actually authenticate, because that was a thing for me. I was like, listen, if I'm going to come back and like, I'm putting my shoes back on. I'm at the point of retiring from dancing and being more behind the scenes. If I'm going to dance 8 shows a week, I need to live this part, because I am not going to be coming. I don't need to do a show at this point where I'm headed. And so I'll never forget that, because that decision allowed me then to be able to meet every single ones that we're talking about. I remember being invited to the drama bookstore to see Lin-Manuel, and he had came to see Swing, and he said, "Oh, I saw that show. You're fantastic." And after the reading, I said to him, "Oh, honey, this is gonna go to Broadway." He goes, "Oh my God, from your mouth to God's ears." I said, "It's gonna take a while. This is 2000. This is 2001, and it's going to take a while, but you're going to get there." But what I saw was the beginning of greatness right in front of me in that little small store underneath. I knew that it was going to be life-changing, because it was going to be the piece that I could just see it happen, where the floodgates would open up. Because I remember that prior to that, the only other things that we had were very stories that you're going to be listening about later. But I remember Natasha Diaz, where we met, and we met during Cape Man. Right? And so that was prior to Lynn, we had shows that were very different, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, I mean, I have to say that with Andrea, what you said is that truth to power. If you want to see something, that's what I did with dance. That's what I did as a choreographer. I mean, this is what I did with all of these, Natasha, all of them. It was a thing where we didn't see ourselves. So I created Latin jazz as a dance form to bring it into the performing arts schools, so that I can teach all of the choreographers and the directors that were coming to me for me to train them, so that they can put it into the shows, because that's what it was like for me. I was the authenticator. That's what I was called back then. They would all invite me to come and see the show and then authenticate whether or not the show looked great, right? So here it is now. I'm going, no, it's our time. Let's go. Come on. Let's see how many more Latinos can we see happening. So I think, to what you're saying, Shireen, and I'll end with this till we'll go to the next question. It's so like, it is, for me, it's like full circle, because I see myself in you. I was you when I was growing up. The difference was there was no door for me to step in through, because those doors were shut. So I had to lift a window and create my own door that I opened up. Once I got through, then it was easy for me to be able to see the beautiful faces that we're talking about. Lynn, Andrea, there's Karen Olivo, there's Natasha, there's Julio Monge. There's so many wonderful, incredible, yes, I mean, so many wonderful, incredible artists that have really paved the way for you to be able to still go now, dive in deep, and know that you can do anything that you want. So I just wanted to share that, because that's important. Absolutely. And
may I?
Yes.
Anastasia, yes, please jump in.
Hi, everyone. So, yes, that drama bookstore was a beautiful little egg incubator that we were all, and we would go visit the egg, and there was this beautiful thing that was happening. And I'm so interested to hear all of your stories and all of your impressions, because I feel like I have a very different experience. And my appreciation of this subject and my awareness of the evolution of our representation as Latinx people, the culture has changed a lot. I wrote down a few things. Luis said something at the beginning. He said, and who these stories are serving. The stories that are coming up, who these stories are serving. And then someone else said, America, is New York represents America, or is the rest of America really America? You know what I'm saying? Because you will get an argument on that. People will say America is all these colors, and other people will say America is like this chunk of this is what we were exposed to, so this is really what it is. And then Andrea said excellence, which is what draws the artists. I have a very unique story, and it's not like a lot of people's. And in that way, it informed my path in the way that it has. My parents, you know, they were not like, you know, they were a Puerto Rican and an Italian, but they walked into the room. They walked into rooms where it wasn't like, you know, what do you speak? Where are you from? They were like, do you speak Verdi? Do you speak, you know, Balanchine? This is the fine arts, an opera singer and a ballerina. So there's I think that in the fine arts, like Drea had said, the excellence that New York was fostering, I would be very curious to know, because my dad was the youngest Puerto Rican Met to win the Met auditions at the Metropolitan, 24 years old, okay? And I'm pretty sure that it had nothing to do with him being Puerto Rican.
Right.
But it had everything to do with his artistry and what his talent could afford. So there is an interesting imbalance between people coming through. Leontine Price. I mean, like you name any fine artist of ethnicity, and you wonder how their paths were, because at some point it gets, can you hit the note or can't you? Can you play this role, this opera role, or can't you? And this melting pot in the 70s in the fine arts, and then this big hole between the kinds of stories that were being told. You know, it's so interesting. I remember when Lynn came to see the Cape Men, because then shortly thereafter, I went to see him there too, in that basement, and they played me the score. And I remember, it's interesting. I remember feeling so, like you said, Maria, you know, I want to write something where I don't see someone with a knife in my hand. And I thought, oh, wow, I guess that really means something to this culture. That really means something to you, because I'm mostly artist, less Italian, less Puerto Rican. I don't really identify as either. To me, they're my colors. And I didn't learn, like all of you, I didn't learn that I was a color because of Diaz until we got into, like you said, Shireen, where do you fit? Well, I could fit anywhere. I just thought I was a brunette. I never thought I was anything but brunette, you know, but all these roles I was going for were going to blonde women. And the farthest I got was due to whatever potency I had as a storyteller, right? To challenge their perception of what they thought they were looking for. But it was interesting when this need to see yourself represented in a certain positive way. I mean, I'm going to play devil's advocate, because I'll say, well, Don Giovanni didn't cut a very nice figure, right?
Yeah.
But we don't always tell stories about pretty pictures. You know, great art is also about looking at character. And in defense of an aspect of the Cape Man, we all knew that ultimately it was a story about, is redemption possible? That is what is at the heart of the Cape Man. But you would never know it, because it wasn't allowed. And Paul Simon was eons ahead of his time. How do you talking to who do these stories serve? Did the Cape Man serve the Latin population? I don't know. He tried to get Mark Antony, Ednita Nazario. He tried to get
Ruben Blades, you know, Sara Ramirez,
because all of this
orchestrations.
Yeah.
Trying to sell it. Who is going to buy these tickets? Who is this story serving?
I remember that. I mean, I remember that time because I remember Mark Morris, coming, and they invited me to want to be a part of that, right? And at the time, I was not, my headspace was more going towards film and television and not towards theater. But it's so funny coming back. Yes.
No. You guys, you all need to know this, because this is hysterical. So we had, I'm going to tell it. I'm going to out it, Maria.
Oh my God, go ahead, Natasha.
So Julio Monge and I played the two characters that grow up, and they have a club, right? So in the second part of the show of the Cape Man, they have this dance, and Mark Morris, genius in his sector, had no idea.
Yes.
About anything.
But that happens so often.
Wait, and I pulled Julio aside and I said, Julio, we got to call Maria.
Remember that?
So we paid Maria Torres $90.
Yep. And I didn't even want it. I'm like, just come over. Just come over to the house. I'll choreograph the whole thing. Get out.
And you know what, Maria? I have it on tape. And I am.
I gotta see it.
I gotta see it. Those bell bottoms and everything.
Yeah.
But finding ways to be like.
Yeah. And it was so funny, you know why? Because the thing is that Mark had called me, and I remember for me to be involved, and at the time that was not my headspace, and because of Julio, that's how I met you. And Julio was like, Maria, you gotta, and we did it in my living room, guys. Let's just put it out there. I said, you come to my house because I have to be on a plane to LA. So you come to my house, and I will do what I gotta do to get you guys going. And when I come back, I'll look at it and I'll give notes or whatever. But I just wanted to help make it better because I wanted them to be happy, because at the end of the day, if you're going to go out there, and I understood that if you're going to go out there, you want to go out there 8 shows a week doing something that you're going to love, that's going to be representative of what you want to bring. So I remember that, but I also remember the sitting in the audience, except for you guys and maybe a couple of other things, and understanding why the masses were not accepting it. It was because I was watching a show. We were watching a show about a character that was not really, somebody that Latinos wanted to see on stage. Do you know what I mean? That's the end of the day. You know what I mean?
Again, that speaks to who are these stories serving. I mean, in terms of like the figure and what the kind of, Eleanor Roosevelt came to his aid to humanize what happened to this child.
Yeah.
The child. And he became a figure at that time of humanizing the intense struggle and hardship of immigrants coming to this country. And that was also something else. It's like, this is human. This is a human. Look at what this person has gone through.
Yeah.
Child. So again, you can have many, I feel like you can have many different kinds of conversations about this, refined and not refined. But I was very touched. And you're right, Drea, it's like, go home and pick up a pen and write what you want to see. And maybe there will be people out there who will buy a ticket, but that's the larger question. How do you make these essential? How do you appeal to people if they don't feel like if they're not interested in seeing things that don't look like them? Where do you make that bridge? How is that bridge made?
Can we go to Jaime?
Jaime and then Shireen,
Yeah, I just want to recap a few things that I like from this conversation that I think are very important. One is we have our very unique journey, and every journey is valid, and every journey is wonderful, and not because some Latinos speak more Spanish than the other one, he's more Latino than the other ones, or because he's more brown or she's more brown. I think we have our very unique journey, our very unique story, and all those stories can be on stage. I'm an immigrant. My English is very bad. I have been learning through the years, and that's my story. And I just got my green card 2 weeks ago, after 14 years. So, and that's my story. But that doesn't mean that it's the only and the right story. Exactly. So there are many, many stories. The other thing, community. When Maria helped Natasha, community. I think that's something that we need right now. And that needs to be hand by hand with honesty. We have our own stories, but when you tell those stories with honesty, and with the help of your community, we're gonna go places. There's no wrong with that. We just need to know that every story, we need to help each other's story and not try to fight or complain about other stories. That's his story. That's her story. Why do you complain about that story? Write your own story. Period.
This is something that Maria and I talk about often. Neither one of us subscribe to the fact that people think you have to step on someone else to get ahead. I feel like if you got a hammer and you got some nails and I got some wood, that we can create a ladder and we can all swiftly and safely climb to the top because there's enough space for all of us.
Yeah, and I think one of our mission as artists and as part of community is support others' stories.
Mm-hmm.
If I don't see myself in that story,
it's okay.
That doesn't mean that, yeah, it's okay. That's
okay.
her story, his story from his point of view.
And
okay?
if we want others to have empathy for us, it works both ways.
Exactly.
I think that we can't be scared of how different we are, because I think that's been a part of the problem. It's like there's that one Latino spot, and so let's all go in there and fight so that then you have the one Latino spot. And by the way, that one story has to cover all the stories. One, it's misrepresenting everybody. Two, being Hispanic and Latino and Latinx is different cultures with different backgrounds. A Mexican story is different than a Dominican story, which is different than a Cuban story. And I think that we also have to talk about that form is also a way. I think that we try to confine ourselves to the classic American form, like the way that, you know, Arthur Miller once wrote a play. That's how plays are. And I think that's okay. Like my dude back here, Vigilio Piñera, he did whatever the heck he wanted on the page, and he did. And it's new forms, and that is also where Latinidad and our culture can come out. So it's not just being confined ourselves to fit the traditional American standard, but really trying to break that open. What does that mean? We're way more poetic. Our music's nuts. Let it all be that.
Yeah, and that's the reason why we're here too, because I think this is why I was insistent with working with Hector and with Joe to create an evening where we can all discuss this, because it's complex. There's a lot of complexities within because there's over 33 countries, and then we talk about where we're from and how we're mixed, whether we're American or non-American. And so I think this discussion is the beginning of opening up more ideas and more conversations that will lead to more creativity, right? So I think that's important too. Mm-hmm.
Which I think we should swing to Andrea, because I know she's got to leave. She's got a show tonight. Tell us what you're doing.
That's right, my love.
Thank you. First of all, it's an honor to serve with you all and hear your stories, and may we continue to be out there serving and evolving together.
Yes.
I'm working on a show by Michael John Lacusa about the stories of Graciela Daniel, and she directed it, the wonderful Graciela Daniel, who's a legendary choreographer, director. She's receiving a Lifetime Achievement Tony this year. And this is the story of the 3 women in Argentina that raised her and made her who she is. It's called The Gardens of Anuncia. So,
Say that one more time, The Gardens. Can you say that?
The Garden of Anuncia.
The Garden of Anuncia.
It can't be the Gardens of Graciela, because she didn't want her name out there. She was like, it's not all about me. This is a work about, you know.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's a really, really incredible testament to women, family, survival. And she's such an impressive human being to be around, and her work is so impressive. But when you see what humble beginnings she came from, it's such an inspiration to us all. So anyway,
thank you.
All my love.
Thank you, my love. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate it. Have a great show. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
So with that, I would like to segue us into our donors for the evening. So let's check out who is helping us put this little show on.
Our first sponsor is Botanica Beauty. After studying chemical engineering at Purdue University and working for 16 years in the beauty industry, Aisha Ceballo Crump began working on her own products, which she shared with her own multicultural family for over a decade. Honey Baby Naturals was born and became an instant success, making Aisha the first Latina to have a natural hair and skin care line in mass retail. This success and the fact that the Latina community was underserved and ignored inspired Aisha to create Botanica Beauty. She hopes that her success thus far will empower women of color to become bold leaders and pave the way for future generations. Our second sponsor is Erin Condren, a lifestyle brand known for creating fun and functional organization essentials, from high-quality notebooks to custom organizers and more. Each product is intentionally crafted to help achieve goals, reduce stress, and lead more joyful, meaningful lives through organization. They are happy to be celebrating Latinx Heritage Month with beautiful and inspiring designs from their Latinx artists, and 35% of the net proceeds will be donated to the Hispanic Scholarship Fund through October 15th, 2021. The Hispanic Scholarship Fund is the leading national nonprofit organization that empowers students to successfully complete a higher education. For more info and products, please visit erincondran.com. And we'd also like to give a special thank you to Debbie Ramirez of Ramirez Media Strategies for all the help and love that you've given to New York Theater Barn and this event. Thank you to all of our sponsors.
How about the Botanica Beauty? Let me tell you, I am ready to honor my inner goddess. I don't know if anybody
I'm ready to throw some of this curling stuff in my hair to make it even curlier.
Like, I used this today and like it won't quit. It won't quit. I just love it.
Hysterical. I love the name Botanica. Vamos, mi gente. You gotta get it.
I love it. I love it. And the second sponsor of tonight is actually Erin Condren, the Notebook Company, and I am actually using the notebook right now.
That's so cool. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I love it. I haven't opened my box yet. Yeah, there you go. But I can't wait. Can't wait. That looks pretty.
It's great.
I love that you can change the
Oh, that's so cool looking.
Yeah, that is super cool. You can actually change the front and the back, and you can actually write dry erase on the inside. There's actually a little space for you to take notes.
Let me see which one you have, Natasha. Show me the one you have. Is it different?
We all We all have. I believe it's all we have. We all have the same one.
Awesome. Well, I got a box, and I have a box for Emilio. I'm going to be sending it.
What's lovely is that the covers are interchangeable, so you can actually change.
Oh, I love it. Oh, let your dreams blossom. I love that. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
And dreams.
I feel like this panel is a dream blossoming.
And this is going to help out. Tell us, are the proceeds to this going to go to something for education? Is that what it said?
About 35% of the proceeds of the sales on these notebooks are actually going to go to the Hispanic Scholarship Fund. And we're excited to help get Latinos in school, studying, getting your diplomas, because the diploma is forever.
There you go. Excellent. Excellent.
So I think Maria had a question about All-American Works that I think she wants to get to.
Yes. So this is I guess there's a couple of different things, and it's a two-part question. So how do you tackle projects in stereotype that stereotype Latinos? That's question one. Part two of this question is how can we make opportunities and advocate for ourselves? So whoever wants to take that question.
Because that's a loaded question, I want you to have some time to ruminate. And we have a little timeline that Maria and I put together about some of the landmark musicals that were for us as Latino people. So let's just take a tune on that, and then we'll come back to the question.
Okay, good. We didn't see any breakthroughs for Latino people in theater until the landmark musical West Side Story, which opened in 1957 and spotlighted the living legend Chita Rivera. Though told through a white lens, it remained Latinos' main contribution to the American theater for over a decade, with revivals in 60 and 64 and a movie adaptation in 1961.
Rita Moreno made history in 1975 by being the first Latina to win a Tony for The Ritz.
Rita Moreno is thrilled, but Rosa Dolores Alverio from Humacao, Puerto Rico is undone.
That same year, A Chorus Line opened on Broadway and broke all the conventional theater rules and had Latino characters, including Priscilla Lopez as Diana Morales, which earned her a Tony nomination, and Sammy Williams won a Tony for his portrayal of Paul San Marco. Then Evita opened in '79.
West Side Story has its third Broadway revival, starring Debbie Allen as Anita in 1980, and the film adaptation of A Chorus Line flops at the box office.
Kiss of the Spider Woman opened on Broadway in 1993, starring Chita Rivera, for which she won her second Tony Award. Jonathan Larson's Rent opened in 96 and featured roles like Mimi Marquez, played by Daphne Vega, and Wilson Germain Heredia earned a Tony for his portrayal of Angel Dumont Chouinard.
Evita was adapted for film starring Madonna in 96. Forever Tango opened in 97, and The Cape Man made a big and controversial splash in 98. The double homicide story starring Salsa stars Ruben Blades and Mark Anthony received 3 Tony nominations but only ran for 68 performances. Due to audiences' protests the show and its commercial failure, the cast album was delayed, not released until 8 years later. Swing opened in 1999 and had the Latin music and dance feature that starred Maria Torres, yours truly.
Forever Tango enjoyed a 114 performance revival in 2004. Rent received a movie adaptation in 2005, and a highly anticipated 2006 revival of A Chorus Line spawned a documentary about the casting and remounting of the show called Every Little Step in 2008.
Then In the Heights opened in 2008 and changed the face of musical theater again. A Latino musical makes it to Broadway for the first time, written and performed by Latino people, and for the first time in Broadway history, a cast of Latinos existed on stage without having to play murderers, drug dealers, negative stereotypes, or caricatures.
In 2009, West Side Story had its 5th revival on Broadway, but this time the Sharks would rumble in Spanish, and Karen Olivo won her first Tony for her portrayal of Anita.
Evita, revived in 2012, Forever Tango was revived in 2013. Then, On Your Feet, exploded onto Broadway in 2015, holds the title for the highest number of Latinos working on a Broadway show, and earned a Tony nomination for Best Choreography.
Oddly enough, West Side Story was in its 6th revival in 2020 before the shutdown, and another film adaptation is expected for release in 2021.
Though these shows are the ones to have made notable differences for the Latinx theatrical community, we would be remiss not to acknowledge the work, artistry, and talent of some of our community's best and brightest stars and shows that have featured Latin roles.
So there's a lot of works that I feel like everybody has touched or seen, or they have friends that they saw that video.
You got our salsa.
I'm telling you,
Yes.
I told you I followed your career. I said it.
Those bell bottoms, pero those bell bottoms. Wow, that was the best. That dance was hot. Like literally, was like 4 counts of 8, and it was like the best.
Oh my God, that was so cool. Thank you, Hector, for putting that together.
Yes.
It's really beautiful. Really great job.
I think we're missing Suit.
Yes. Yeah.
That actually is one of the only ones from that time that it was written like by not a white person.
But Luis Valdez, who wrote it. Yeah, I got to work with him, in the revival.
Broadway, like 78, 79, maybe. On Broadway.
Yes, and Edward James almost starred in that role. That's who started that role when it came to Broadway. And I had the honor of working on the 40th anniversary of Zoot Suit for the Center Theater Group with Luis Valdez and a brand new group and interpretation. He put together. He was like. Let me just say for the audience that's watching here, let's say, Luis Valdez was the first of what Lin-Manuel followed, because he was really outside of the box. He's unbelievable. What he did at that time frame and what I got to see where he wanted to put the film and that play together and turn it into a musical it was unreal and unbelievable. So you're right. That definitely has to be mentioned, because that was a very powerful story that was based on a true story of young boys that were being persecuted and thrown in jail and accused of murder that they did not commit.
And Maria, I think the other side of all this is also like, I think of Antonio Banderas in 9.
In 9, yes.
So it's also like, and to me, at least the conversation I'm also incredibly interested in from my perspective in my life is where it is what is illuminated inside the character. That it's not about, yes, you can't escape the fact that theater is a picture. we are all different. Yes, cultures are different. We are different frequencies. We feel things differently. We think about things differently. But the thing that unites us is our humanity, and that we go to the theater to see and remember how much we share these emotional journey of life together from different perspectives. But ultimately, the thing is that, I mean, at least my end game that I hope is that it doesn't matter what you look like.
Yeah,
If you anything in the story, then that is, you win the part because of that. And I can't tell you the amount of rooms where I was literally like almost piercing through, and I sometimes got through, and sometimes I didn't.
Well, to that effect, I would like to bring up a quote. You have a little show, Tosh Talk, and
yes, I started this show. It's just because this whole pandemic, everybody was talking about a lot of stuff, but most recently, things got very. I think they got very frightening and very scary around this topic of race, and I wasn't liking the tone that was happening around. And I also wanted to check in with people that I respected who were actually in positions of power. And they happened to be all different colors. A white man, Mike Isaacson, who was the artistic director of the Muni and a Broadway producer. Melia Ben-Sassin, who was the first female artistic director of Hartford Stage, who is Mexican and Jewish.
Yep.
And
on the board of SDC.
Yes, and we serve together, and we serve on that board together. Yes, and amazing woman.
And Jerry Dixon, who is an incredible performer, who is also now the head of the Village Theater in Seattle. And I wanted to ask them, how are you taking us representationally? How are you fielding yourself from the onslaught of accusations and prescriptive people bossing and telling everybody what to do?
Well, I would actually like to segue into a quote from Melia that was actually on your show. She said, "It is an act of imagination to cast a play, and that the American theater is about getting to the heart of what the great American theater can be, and that the goal is telling a story about the bigger picture of what it means to be a human."
And
with that in mind, I'd like to circle back to Maria's initial question.
Oh, but wait, let me just tell you, because we're doing this play, Maria, we're doing this play that I want everybody to come and see, because it is the way she has cast it. It is Eugene O'Neill's A Wilderness. It is her, and it's an American classic, but you look around the room, guys, I'm not kidding you. There is black, white. We have a most beautiful colored cast, bringing this fundamentally very American story from taking place in 1906, rendered by the genius mind of Melia Ben-Sassin as a Mexican Jew to speak to this moment. She is delivering us by her decisions into her first offering, and it is spectacular already. They're not even off book. And I am moved to tears by the artists that I see in the room, not just the colors, but the fact that this very white American thing is coming through these colors with this perfect sense of style, of grace of the period. I am moved to tears because it's where our colors disappear. And yet they don't, and yet they don't, and yet they don't.
And when is it? Tell us when it's opening. Tell us about that a little bit more.
It runs at Hartford Stage. It's about 2 hours away from New York City, October 14th to November 7th.
Fantastic.
The theater's coming back to life, and it's her first show here. Many more brilliant things to come from her. Thank you for me.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, I have the pleasure of serving with her on the executive board of SDC, and she is a really force to be admired. You know, so and she is. Yeah, absolutely. So Hector, go ahead. You were going to ask some questions, my darling.
Yes, so I wanted to circle back to Maria's question about how do you tackle projects that stereotype Latinos And how can we create opportunities and advocate for ourselves in the arena of theater?
Can I answer that? Yeah. So a lot of people saw my face. I was on that West Side Story playbill. That was me. And so yeah, to do West Side Story, the one of the like biggest questions is how do you kind of cast a stereotype? And something that some of my cast members have actually said, which is really beautiful, is that my protest is being in the room. Me being in the room is something that, as we've all talked about, evolution, that wasn't there, right? And so that alone is the first part, is being there. The whole panel that we have is called A Seat at the Table, right? So it's being able to get that seat, building that seat, however you get the seat, it's a seat at the table. And then from there, it goes on to, as you've beautifully said, we're all human beings. So I bring who I am. Who am I within the culture, within what I've learned in my life? Who am I in Maria, instead of playing Maria the way it's been written? And that's the reason why you can revive things in the first place. Why would you want to mount the same thing? You wouldn't.
Absolutely.
You would want to see the evolution of time and then bring this thing and mount it and bring what you can have. I think that also a big part of the conversation that we've had, I promise, Vanessa, I'm going to go really fast. And then I saw you've got some stuff to say.
She's excited. I love it.
I just graduated from college. I got my undergraduate in classical voice. So the idea of the classical voice realm, it circled my life for 7 years before I came back into doing musical theater. And it is true. The idea of European music and the classics and fine arts, it's what you learn. That's literally all you can learn at Juilliard is just the classics in every single division, which can be a very beautiful thing. And you can be cast you can be cast in anything, actually. You can, because we don't know actually who was meant to sing any of this stuff. So if you have the ability to sing it, it's amazing. And the artistry is very important.
Right.
But I also think that something that is, it's in all pieces. It's what we talk about of writers being able to tell an authentic story. Robbie had also brought up about like schools and teachers and people that you listen to. Being in school can be a very difficult thing. And I believe that the teachers that are in there should be people that have been a part of it and have all the knowledge, but also can be kind of detrimental to young people. And I think is a conversation that we also need to continue to have, because that's the formative years before you become this artist that you freelance and you work and you do shows and you do all of this stuff and you try to find your voice, which we've talked about advocating. For me, I was able to really find my voice in school because I would go in and say, I want to do musical theater. At the time, it really didn't have anything to do with what I looked like. It was the kind of art form I wanted to do, which was kind of like a discrimination kind of idea of like the thought that musical theater is not a fine art when you're studying the fine arts.
That's right.
Right. And so that's where I started to have the thought.
The crazy thing is when you find, or the art form that chose you wasn't made in your image or likeness.
Yes.
So then how does that fit?
Yeah. So that's the thing, is like I wasn't fitting. I think anyone can fit in a lot of things. You can try, but what you feel in your heart that you love and need and can support, for me, was musical theater. And that's where I was learning how to advocate for myself, to say, this is what I want to do, and trying to like push at a door and have meetings and have conversations, because that's the biggest thing, right? You say, as humanity, you have conversation to be able to open the dialogue of what's different and new. All of that to also say that institutions, sadly, and especially in the fine arts, can be full of people that don't look like you. And it's really hard because I can't teach anybody. I am not of age. I don't have my master's. I can't teach in university, right? But the teachers that we had at the time, all 8 voice teachers were white people. And the conversations that were had with me behind closed doors of a voice lesson or in a class weren't the conversations that should be had, because then when you do get cast and you do mount something that doesn't look at race, doesn't look at who you are, the thing that happened behind the closed door is what forms who you are. And start, like, I remember going into a voice lesson and finishing, I was very passionate about a conversation, had a whole conversation, and my teacher looked at me and was like, so are you going to be really like Jersey about this? And I was like, are you trying to say I'm ghetto but don't know how to say I'm ghetto? Like, what are you going for, ma'am? It's those kinds of things that I think in the learning process, that is also really important to have people of all cultures and all backgrounds. It's not to say that there shouldn't be any white people. It's to say there should also be people of color. There should be everyone in that room to be able to say, like, who you are is great. And then as we do the casting of, as you said, Don Giovanni, like the magic flute, it's all different people.
Carmen. Yeah. I mean, what if people tried to mount the opera, the story Carmen today, would that be considered derogatory?
Right.
And that's, and that's the, sorry. Yeah. Victoria, I was just going to say that's the conversation to have.
Yeah.
Well,
but yes.
So two things. One, I'm currently a professor, and from the other side of the spectrum is that then being that professor is also like, everybody's like, okay, now you have to, here you go, Hispanic lady, come in and say all the things, and you're like, okay, that's a lot of pressure. And also I think, the thing I tell my students is like, one thing is being in the classroom and learning, and the other thing is real life, and those two things are different. And to the Carmen point, I recently directed Carmen, like the opera, and I was like, screw this. She is not a vixen. She says what she wants. She's coming in. And actually, I got a lot of pushback afterwards from audience members who were like, how dare you change a classic? And I'm like, how dare we keep on talking about women this way? Anyway, but Vane wanted to say something. I just needed to respond to those two things. So I'm like, I think you guys are talking to me right now.
Go ahead, Vanessa, and then I want Emilia to also chime in. Oh, yeah.
It's super interesting to hear from the actor perspective and then the writer perspective, because what's happening is I'm seeing, and even when I see the trajectory, right, it's the same thing revived over and over and over again. Here's the accepted POC, Latinx, whatever it is. So if you're trying to fit the thing, well, why don't you let the new stories come in that then you can actually not have to do that? Because that's the real problem here. And that's also the real problem with the label, because the label POC doesn't even withstand itself. It's like, oh, who placed that on me or us or whatever it is? You know what I mean? Because it doesn't even withstand its own thing, because each person is an individual. And then you have to add BIPOC, because Black is not the same thing as Indigenous, which is not the same thing as a person of color, which is not the same thing as a Cuban or a Puerto Rican or a Mexican or whatever.
And then also it's like the order of the thing. So it's like, does that mean that Black and then Indigenous people are first, and then the rest of us are like,
it's very confusing. It's very confusing. It's really confusing. And I think one of the things that I'm hearing from everybody, first of all, Shireen, I was you, but not in the fine arts. And that's why I've been a rebel of my life. I'm living I created my own box. So we'll have that conversation later. Natasha, I totally get what she's saying too, because Natasha's saying that we need to be able to step outside of those things and not look at color and allow whatever, if it's a classic piece like what she's talking about, to be able to do that. I love what Vanessa said, because there is a difference between what's happening in education, but this is why we're having this first conversation, because it's going to lead to all the rest of it. It's got to be dismantled. At the end of the day, I don't want to be a hashtag. I don't want to be called BIPOC, POC, people of color, POC, whatever, the POC or whatever, you know what I mean? The thing is that we've gotten to a place now that all of these things have come to a head where we need to talk about it, but we also, as Latinos, have to take a seat at the table and bring in, and get to see, like, next time a conversation, somebody said, producers, yes, 100% we could do that. But the other thing too, I think what's important to say here is that for the first time, we're acknowledging the fact that we're all different. Shireen and I, and Emilio, we are Afro-Latino, and Afro-Latinidad is a big thing for us, because that's a whole nother conversation that cannot be had right now. It has to have behind closed doors, because we're going to go into then what happens with Afro-Latinidad, which is colorism, and there's a bunch of stuff that I don't want to go into in right here, right now, because that is not the conversation to have. I promised myself, and I promised everybody that I would not go into that conversation because I really wanted to go there.
We need another 3 hours.
We need another 3 hours for that. But I also do want to hear from Emilio, because as the American, as the chair of the American Theater Wing, he has, you should weigh in on this, hon, because you have some things that you want to also, say about this. Go ahead.
Right. And Hector, your question was, how do you deal in a project that's with a stereotypical Latin?
How do you tackle projects that stereotype Latinos? That's first question. And then there's a second question to that. Okay, let's start with that one.
I'm very pragmatic. So I'm going to talk to you from, like, let's say a producer's head. Or a consumer. If you are Latino, Latinx, however you identify, and there's a project that is showing your culture in a derogatory way, you have the power of your purse to not support it. That's number one. Use your dollars. That's how you make a difference. Use your dollars. Coins. That's what theater is a business. As much as we want to change this, how much as we wanted to represent that, at the end of the day, it's about putting bodies in seats.
That's right.
Regardless of what's on the stage.
Yes.
So you have to look at, I think every performer should also have a business component to their thinking. Even if you're a actor, think about writing, think about creating your own thing. Like Andrea said, Lynn wrote what he wanted to see. I think that's part two. If what you see out there is not speaking to you, write it. If you're not a writer, find a friend who's a writer, collaborate. Also we as people of color need to put our money where our mouth is. We have a lot of very wealthy Latinos in this world. They should be producing people on stage.
Yes.
You can't just cry that you see Latin people, but you don't do anything about it when it comes to supporting initiatives, theaters. There's so many Latinos that can support those kind of things. So as the chair of the American Theater Wing, I look at the entire ecosystem of the theater, where it affects everyone from janitors to performers to producers. And my entire career was about being the only one in the room. I started my career 25 years ago when we didn't have this whole racial reckoning. So I know what it is to be the only one in the room. But I realized that for me to really make a difference, because I'm not a singer, I'm not a dancer, I'm a costume designer, which is amazing and I love it. But for me to make a difference, I had to be in the room. And that meant sometimes swallow my pride, get in the room and make a difference. And hopefully you start making enough of a difference where now I'm in a place where there is in our 75-year history, that there's a Latino as chair. And when I started my career, I didn't ever intended to be where I am. I just knew that I loved what I did and I knew we had a place here, but I knew I had to figure out how do we get to inside the room. So for me, the biggest thing, one of the things that I'm really trying to push is to find donors of color who really want to help our artists. Because, if you go down every organization, whether it's the Lily is white to the most colored, a lot of the donors are these big non-colored foundations. So we're asking the people who are already funding our institutions why they don't put us in front.
Right.
I think we have to create our own. They should be a Latino foundation for the arts. Emilio Estefan should put in a big bunch of money.
Yes.
I was going to ask you, did they produce?
You guys you love us when we come to your performances and we buy your products. It's time that you invest in the community.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's what, and that's big. That's big what you just said, because it's true. We're at a place now where we have so many accomplished and wealthy Latinos that they need to now we're calling them to action. Step up and join the conversation, but more importantly, open up that purse and join and support us. Literally, I'm just gonna say it that way. Really, literally look at it from that lens where it is taking a look at what you're saying, that we need them to support us with their dollars, and that is important, because that is the one thing is that what I think what resonated with me is that we can't ask the present institutions to be able to support us. It has to be the people who look like us, that they have to now step up and say, yeah, we're gonna join forces. Just like this is happening tonight. This has been a conversation. It was in my head a year ago. And now I joined Theater Barn last year, and we talked about it, and look what's happening this year. And now we want to continue, because we have more things that we're going to be continuing to do to continue this conversation even deeper. Because obviously, look how long we've been on there, and we haven't even scratched the surface of the many different types of conversations that we want to have.
So there's also something about that, even what Emilio was saying too, is that even we as writers, as actors, as any composers, we also have to learn about producing, so we know what to ask.
Yes, absolutely. That's
a huge thing, that to learn to be exactly know how to reach out to these people, especially Latina people, to be like, this is what we need, and this is going to speak to you, and this is why.
And the art of pitching. I mean, Vanessa and I, when we created Ahora Camino Collective, we were like, we're just joining forces because it's easier to hire us as writer-director. We're not producers. And before you know it, you realize que pa comer, you have to produce. And the amount of pitching and pushing and talking, y el otro, and connecting, it's an immense amount of work that is necessary. And also, finding the balance of saying, listen, if you want to give the funding, people want you to, but I need you to do it this way. I need you to do it the comfortable way. And I mean, I know that you all just got to know us now, but we are de madre, and we're very much like, we're doing it our way.
It's the only one way to do it.
I know that she's right here, but I have to quote her. Like, we were in a panel once, and Vanessa was like, sometimes you also have to build your own table. Like, yes, you want the seat at the table. Sometimes you have to show, like, the amount of showing things that we have had to do. Okay, total shameless plug, but we have to talk about it. We did this show in Miami. I'm talking about Miami, a city that does not go to the theater, for 8 months. Build it and they will come. Build it and they will come. For 8 months, we did an immersive theatrical experience about Hispanic people, like going through a Cuban, like the whole thing. The tickets were not cheap. And for 8 months, those shows were sold out. Wow. And it's not New York, and it's not a theater audience, and it's anything. You know what that proved to me? That our stories weren't being told. And once you tell the stories and you start doing it, and people start putting money behind where it matters, people will show up.
Well, that's really interesting, because I went to Viva Broadway there when we see ourselves. They had a presentation in Times Square recently, and the discussion was that we have all of this talent. The audiences need an invitation. Right. They need shows that are about them. They need things that are going to inspire them and make them want to go to the theater.
Well, you know what you're saying about on your feet. I mean, it is literally about what you're saying.
Yeah,
she made a space not only for the Latin sound in American pop culture, but
around the world.
But she made her own version of it. It's not about here. This is Latin music. She was like, look what pop can be.
Yes.
When
absolutely. You let rice and beans and hamburgers.
It's huge. I mean, that story might be a jukebox musical, but what she overcame is huge.
Yeah, huge.
And the same thing with Tina Turner. What she did for women and race. Becoming, that's why even these stories are making places, are about people who fought to make places for themselves.
Absolutely. Yep.
Well, with that said, I'd like to let everybody at home know that you can support artists. You can support Latinx artists by going to www.nytheaterbarn.org/give and donate everything that you can today. No donation is too small. No donation is too large. Or you can use the number that's on the screen, 631-710-NYTB. That's 631-710-6982. Like you're voting for your favorite American Idol finalist.
There you go. That's right. And I think
and like I like to say, the proceeds from tonight will be going to a production of Sueños. And Maria is really excited to be part of that. Tell us why you're excited about Sueños.
I'm excited because I just feel like it encompasses what we've been talking about. It's a story that's a universal story. We've got it's told through the eyes of an intergenerational family, and it allows you to actually be able to experience what it's like to be a Latino within the American fabric, and also look at it from the different perspective and lens. And so for me, it's an honor to direct this piece, and I'm looking forward to really seeing what we can come out of it. Because that's exactly why we wanted to do this. We want to be able to say that at the end of the day, this is the next generation, right? We want to encourage Jesse and those like him and after him to continue to write those stories, like Jaime Lozano, who's here, and we're going to be working on some projects. So I want to support as much as I can, and my knowledge and my whatever I could do, my strengths in whatever capacity. I'm also here because yo soy de madre también, Victoria. Emilio knows. I'm like, and the whole thing is that it's from all sides, from the educational, from the theatrical, from the personal, the human, because we are humans and we each have gone. Obviously, this is why we're still on past the time that we were supposed to be here, because we're all passionate about the fact that this is an important pivotal moment for us to be able to say presente. We're here, and it's up to us, by us to continue to really do what we're doing now. This is why I joined New York Theater Bond in directing this new piece, Sueños.
And more importantly, Maria, that we all have to understand that we need to help to teach other people how to have these conversations.
Absolutely.
Because it's not going to happen in any other way. We need to teach.
Yeah, and a safe space and not combative, and at the same time, we know that we've got the younger generation that's dismantling and burning stuff. And I said that's great. That's all great that you want to dismantle and burn stuff, but are you going to be able to come back and have something that you can take on? No. What happens is that it's one generation at a time. I'm standing on the shoulders of my parents who came here, and therefore, for me, what I've done is that I've paved the way for the generation that's here. And you get to look at any Latin show, I've put my fingerprint on it. Why? Because I wanted it to be successful, not because I wanted to be able to be pigeonholed. I knew that I was going to be pigeonholed. I didn't care. I was like, really pigeonholed? I'm a Latina. Who cares? Right. But you know what? I want to see those stories. It can't be a silos. We've got to be able to see thousands of us from all different shapes and sizes and ways that I think is so important. This is why this is not a one-off. This is only the beginning of important conversations like this. So I really wanted to say that.
I have a whole, this is what I do in my Tash Talk. This is what I've been doing. I have a
awesome. When is it? Tell us what it is.
Already up. It's in my Instagram, on my link tree. I talk to these amazing producers.
Great.
They are, because they're tackling this conversation in actual discussions.
In real time.
But I would also say though that also the younger generation coming from that younger generation, it's the education. It is really the education, because being in an institution, the biggest thing that happened in the reckoning before COVID and during COVID is a lot came out, and what felt for a lot of students was that the only way we were going to get our voice heard was that we were just going to yell at the top of our lungs. Not the best way, but it felt like, because especially in education, you feel so pushed down and stifled by a very large staff as kids trying to just learn. And so I think that, as Emilio also said, producers, people bringing money, you also bring that to educational places and teaching the younger generation, the conversations, the finance, all of that. It's teaching, it's education.
To be your own really CEO. At the heart of it. Really important to learn how to be your own CEO. That is something that I had to learn very, very young, because as I said, when I opened up, there was no door or window for me to step through. I had to create that door and lift the window and step through it. So I was always my own CEO. I didn't have an agent until 10 years into my career, when people said, who's representing you? I said, 1-800-ME. Really, I said, yes, my phone rings at my house, and I have every celebrity, every producer, every director, every choreographer calling me at my house when I didn't even know that at the time that was that I thought that was a norm. I didn't know that was something different because I didn't know any better. All I knew is that I wanted to be expressing myself, right? All I wanted to do is give me a chance to be able to be an artist. That's all I want. Where I do it, it doesn't matter. I just want to be an artist. So I'm coming from a completely different way than everybody's here. But I think to really encapsulate what we've been talking about is that education is key. Conversation is important, but follow through in action with transformative activism, not performative activism. It's going to help us because that is a thing. There's a thing between performative activism and the talk versus the transformative. Really taking a good lens and how we can actually make a difference by the things that each one takes a personal responsibility to say, but Essente, I am here and I'm going to do this. Not for the ego, but for the things that we were talking about and what Emilio said. Understanding that the business requires a responsibility that is of it itself, it's insurmountable, the amount of knowledge that you have to get. But the other part of it, from the personal side of it, is also taking an understanding that when you walk into that room, you're walking in with all the ancestors as well as the new people that are going to be receiving you. And so you must come much more prepared than you were before if you're a person of color. If you're a Latino, and yes, you do have to come much more prepared. And as long as we're clear about that, then the rest of it is going to be a continuation of what's happening here tonight. And I know that Jaime wanted to say something, Hector, before we go to the next thing. So Jaime, you want to jump in?
No, I completely forgot what I was about to say. No, but just to clarify that when it's something that was back then when we were talking about labels and all that.
Oh, the BIPOC and the POC and the POC.
Yeah, that we shouldn't be like, that we should be able to tell and be in any kind of story. But my personal thought right now, as an immigrant and as a Mexican Latinx composer, at least in the next 5 years, I want to focus on my stories. You know, I know that there's actors that they want to be cast in any kind of story, but I think that we also have a responsibility with our own stories, and both things are right.
Yes, both things are
right.
Both
things are right. It's not like you're doing more for your people because you're doing one thing or the other one. Those things are the same as important.
Connecting to your audience, you know, that's the Emilio. I'm so curious about what you're doing because it really is. Where are the dollars for the butts and seats, and how do you connect them to Jaime's story? I mean,
diversity in all levels. Diversity from the producers, writers, composers, stage managers, casting directors, costume designers, set designers, actors, musicians, everywhere.
I think
absolutely.
If I may
go
just
ahead.
add, I think it starts in education. We have to teach our youngins that there's more to the theater maybe than just performing.
Absolutely.
There's set design, there's lighting design, there's projection, there's costumes, there's stage managing, there's props.
But the crazy thing is like there's all of these amazing opportunities, all these phenomenal things that we can do because we are a resilient people.
Into schools. At the Wing, we have an initiative with Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's called the Andrew Lloyd Webber Initiative, where he gave us a seed money. And every year we try to match it, where we give funds to schools around the country. Doesn't matter where, you just have to show a need for your theatrical programs, or if you're an art teacher that wants to take your kids on a field trip to a museum and the school district doesn't have any funds because the art programs, as we all know, are the first ones to get cut out of any business. So the Andrew Lloyd Webber Foundation, we do that. What I want to do, and I told my board, which I'm meeting with them next week, my first board meeting, I said one of the initiatives that I really, really want to push is that we have to get back into public schools to start getting art to these young children.
That's where I came from. Public school.
Me too. I mean, when I was in public school in New York, there was art everywhere. Art classes.
That was.
So we need to start a pipeline of how do we get those people that we want in those positions started. You know, like I said, I've been the only one for my entire career, basically until the last 3 years, and that's where it starts. Before, the going line was, oh, we can't find anyone, you know? And I would say that's not true. Have you called X, Y, and Z? Because I know these people. So also we need to start maybe a database so that when producers and directors are looking for talent, let's just call it talent and not just Latinx or anything. When they're looking for different type of talent, you can refer them to a database. You know, these are people, Latinos who are working, who are doing it. These are people of color who are doing it. But that's how I think we change the industry but it's going to take generations. We may be at the forefront. We're like, you know, we're like the first ones. We're like the first group they send in to clear the brush.
Exactly. That's who we are.
And then
It's true.
Behind us are the ones who reap the rewards. But I think we have to be so in love with the art form that we have a humanity to maybe not see your flowers during your journey.
Yes.
But know that you're setting the road for the generations to come behind you. And hopefully, as an artist, that's enough to keep you going. Because at the end of the day, I have a 4-year term at the wing. I may not get to do everything. And maybe some of the things that I do plan, won't happen in those 4 years. Maybe it'll happen in 8 years. Maybe it'll happen in 10 years. But the fact that we're planting the seeds, semilla.
Yes, seguro.
And
semilla, yeah.
And it comes from the audiences, from the writers, from the people creating it, to the people coming, to the promoters, to getting arts talks into these communities, the talk about representation in this country. That's also political.
It starts young, so.
Yeah, you know, Emilio, actually, my husband he's a set designer and a prop master too, but he is working with a company Proptology that deals with all the head of props all around the country. And they're trying to do exactly that, to reach out to high schools.
They need to start an intern program when you get.
That's what they're looking for. That's what they're trying to create. And so I'll maybe
send them my way. Send them to the wing. We have a database. We know how to create programs for companies. We have a whole bunch of. We have our own database through the Andrew Lloyd Webber, because usually 95% of these schools are of color. Yeah, they're in poorer neighborhoods that can't support themselves. So we have the people that we can plug into all these programs.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. I can't wait to work with you, because I did a lot of work with that. And that's what I'm saying, that is transformative work. And what's so powerful, because we have to wrap up our evening, but what is so powerful about this is that for the first time, we have all of us together, Latinos from all different ethnicities in terms of where you're coming from, right? But being able to have these important conversations, because at the end of the day, like Emilio said, we're not going to get through this all at this time. But the fact that we can all acknowledge that this is important, it's now allowing a general audience that's not accustomed to be able to hear the insights from the theater, to see how the faces and the people behind the lens, right behind the stage, as well as in front, to really hear how much we are passionate and also taking the responsibility to be active and be working at doing what we call a transfer of power. True transfer of power requires education, and it requires time. And I really thank you all for being here and for accepting to be here, because I feel like this has been a tremendous evening. Thank you so much.
So I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I'm getting a little emotional. This was like a dream that I had in my head that I wasn't sure was going to happen, but I feel so supported by New York Theater Barn. I want to thank all the panelists for being here tonight. This really is a dream come true. I've read and watched and seen so much of everybody's work that to be in the same room with you is just really a blessing, and I'm so grateful for it. We're going to send all of our panelists into our Zoom room. You guys have that link from your daily call earlier today. So we'll be seeing you guys a little later.
Yes.
It was so great having everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you. And I'll see you later.
Maria, oh my goodness, an emotional night, a lot to talk about, a lot to cover. I want to remind everyone that this is a fundraiser. It is for SUEñOS, and that you can donate tonight by going to nytheaterbarn.org/give, or you can text the number that is on the screen right now. We're excited to uplift authentic art from Latinx people, and it's just been.
And we're celebrating, we're celebrating our Latinidad. I want to thank the New York Theater Barn, because New York Theater Barn, since 2020, when we started to really support your programming, has only been instrumental. I feel one of the most instrumental companies, aside from Amas Musical Theater, that is taking a look at the new works as well as a multicultural lens, and also the uncomfortable and important conversations that need to be had. So I do want to thank Joe Barros and everybody at the New York Theater Barn and Hector, because we've done a lot of work to prepare for this, and I want to thank you for that, because I really think that was important. And I want to congratulate all of the panelists and thank them again for taking part in this, because I know it's not easy to give up your time the way that we've done. So thank you so much. And thank you for having me, New York Theater Barn.
Alrighty, and with that, we're going to bid you all a very good night, and we hope to see you guys soon.
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ken Davenport. I'm a Broadway producer, and I'm also honored to be on the advisory board of the New York Theater Barn. And I'm going to be honest with you and say that if you had asked me what the New York Theater Barn was just a few months ago, I would have said, I have no idea. It was only during this pandemic, when so many other theaters and businesses were floundering, it was only through the Theater Barn's passionate and relentless marketing of their material and their mission that I became aware of the incredible work that they were doing. And I believe that it takes two things to be successful in this business. One, you need great content, great shows. But two, you need great marketing, backed by an unbelievable passion to get your message out and to grow your following. When they asked me to help, which by the way was also just great marketing and just asking me to assist them, I said absolutely yes. Anyone who is this invested in their core mission and in great shows, and they've got great ones, I know is bound for success, and that's an organization I want to lend my name to.